This episode of RealAg Radio is brought to you by high-performing new Carbine insecticide from FMC. Carbine insecticide delivers fast, selective, and extended control of aphids in alfalfa and pulses, leaving beneficials like lady beetles to help in the fight. Ask your retailer today.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a part of your workday. And a big shout out to everybody also listening on the RealAg Radio podcast, no matter where you are farming or ranching, Canada, the U.S., or beyond. It is great to have you here in our Real Agriculture community. Today's show is brought to you by ABJ AgriProducts, North America's exclusive distributor for air bubble jets and easy jets, providing reduced drift and increased plant coverage. To improve your spraying operation, please visit them at abjagra.com. That is abjagra.com. And we're going to hear from Murray from ABJ here in a little bit today on the program. Looking forward to that very, very much. They got a great lineup, as I just mentioned. So Murray Purvis will be with us here today on the program as today's show sponsor. We'll also be joined by Peter Pete Johnson. He's going to be here to discuss a number of different topics. I got a couple audience questions. Plus, I know that he wants to talk about tillage and erosion as well, and a few other things. We'll also have time today for the top ag news stories of the day. If you have any feedback on today's program, we would love to hear from you. We love your feedback, your comments, your commentary, your thoughts, your opinions, your perspectives. You can do that by sending me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Love your feedback, or call the RealAg feedback line. Great way to give some feedback. 855-776-6147. We have been running a poll at realagriculture.com. We've been asking you a question about the federal government's budget that recently came out. We've covered that budget here on the show. One of the big pieces, I guess, in aggregate is the fact that it shows a $40 billion deficit. Remember, this is the government that talked about, a budget balances itself, and they would have the plan by, I think, 2025 to have the balanced budget again. That's been kind of really thrown out the window. And there are some explanations for that. I guess the pandemic would be a big component of that. But I think there's a lot of criticism being thrown their way, not necessarily showing very strong fiscal restraint. So we asked you, the federal government's budget has a $40 billion deficit without a plan to return to a balanced budget. You are really concerned about Canada's financial future, or you are understanding times are tough globally, or you are indifferent, I really don't follow politics. And not surprising at all, I guess is the easy way to put it. 88% of you have said you're really concerned about Canada's financial future. Now, like I said, I'm not surprised by that result. 5% saying you're indifferent, and 7% say understanding. So pretty strong result from the Real Agriculture audience here on this fun poll, essentially saying, you know what, I think this budget needs to be balanced. So this ties very, very interestingly into what happens in the next Canadian election. This feeds very well, and this is not representative, I think, to how Canadians in general would feel. I think we have a lot of conservative-leaning people in the farming and ranching audience here in Canada. So this is really, I think, people saying, hey, I like the message that Pierre Poilievre is talking about when he talks more about fiscal restraint and kind of the unleashed concerns, or concerns about the unleashed spending of the federal Liberal Party. But does this translate for for other Canadians? That's really the unanswered question. It does, though, and if it does, and I need to look at some of the data and some of the polling that's been done by, like the Ipsos and the Abacus Datas of the world, because they'll have these numbers. But if Canadians are concerned about fiscal matters, and remember, it's about the economy, stupid. If they're concerned about fiscal matters, that poses well in the next election for the Conservative Party, provided that there is, I think, sort of the big unanswered question we're going to talk a little bit about in the news, is the Canadian economy has actually held up quite well through some of these interest rate increases that we have seen. We're going to the Bank of Canada meet on Wednesday. We're going to talk about that in the news, but very fascinating stuff. Not surprised, 88% of you really concerned about Canada's financial future. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And let's just say that was the Canadian number. Let's just say that it wasn't just agriculture, farmers and ranchers. This was Canadians saying 88% are concerned about the financial future. What are people willing to give up? How well would people take the government saying no to certain things? I think that's a big question. That's how we got into this space, is because people don't like to be told no. There's this thirst for a hunger for the government to fix things. And that's how we got here. So we'll see if there's a bit of a transition that happens in the marketplace. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear from Peter Repeat Johnson. You're listening to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by ABJ AgriProducts.
Maximize your yield potential by improving your nutrient use efficiency with WolfTrack's DDP micronutrients from Koch Agronomic Services. WolfTrack's micronutrients allow crops to consistently access the nutrients they need when they need them. And with even coat technology, WolfTrack's products thoroughly coat each and every granule, giving you an even distribution and placing micronutrients in close proximity to growing roots. Better nutrition, better crops, better farming. Get started today at wolftraxmicros.ca. That's wolftraxmicros.ca.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Looking for robust, reliable grain storage solutions? AGI leads the industry in quality, innovation, and offerings to protect your investment. Designed for exceptional cleanout, superior strength, and unbeatable versatility, you can rest easy knowing your grain is secure in an AGI West Steel bin. With 100 years of manufacturing experience, AGI West Steel bins will exceed your expectations for reliable storage. AGI West Steel. Long-term safe storage. Find AGI at your local dealer.
It's Agronomic Monday, and today's show is brought to you by ABJ AgriProducts, North America's exclusive distributor for air bubble jets and easy jets, providing reduced drift and increased plant coverage. To improve your spraying operation, please visit abjagra.com. And as we do every Monday, we are joined by Peter Repeat Johnson. Hey, Pete, how's your weekend?
Oh, the weekend was awesome, Shaun. The weather has been glorious. It is a sunny day. It is almost perfect weather here in Ontario. You know what sunshine makes me feel like. I am a happy camper.
Happy. I like that.
You got it, yes.
Well, this is the time of the year where I think we are happy in general. And we've been complaining about the weather the past few weeks, but it seems like this week we're going to see a bit of a turnaround here.
Yeah, it's like we've gone from winter to summer. We may well set record temperatures this week here in places in Ontario. They're talking about mid-20s temperatures some days, and so you just go, wow, how can it go from minus whatever 10 to plus 23 or plus 25? It just anyway, it's glorious. Things are drying up. Things are happening. The wheat is greening up. My family was here on Easter weekend, so life barely gets better than this, Shaun. It's just awesome.
Well, and if you look out in Western Canada, you look at the forecast for, say, Saskatoon, yeah, same thing, bit of a turnaround. Like we're going to see temperatures up around plus 10, plus 11 the back half of the week, which is also a big turnaround as well. Plus 15 on Sunday in Saskatoon. So, yeah, I think hopefully we are past kind of the crazy winter weather that we've been getting, this late unseasonably cold weather here in early April. And now I think what really, really kicks into gear is some of that trying to watch, I guess that flood watch, we'll call it, when you look at things like the Red River Valley. That's I think all hands on deck there.
Absolutely. And it's not just the Red River Valley. Even here in Ontario, a lot of news media saying make sure you stay away from the rivers and streams, because we had tremendous amount of rain over the last week. So from a week ago last Friday till Thursday before Easter Friday, Good Friday, at my house in Ingersoll, we had 5.6 inches of rain. And so that takes time to move through the creeks and rivers. And boy, after that first happened, there was so many flooded areas and fields and all those kind of things. And even if the temperatures warm up, which is awesome, because I think some areas in Saskatchewan had significant snowfall. And if it stays cold, of course, that snow all just sublimates away and we don't use that moisture. We get some warm temperatures, melt that snow, get that water into the ground. That's a good thing. And if you recall, Shaun, we've talked about, places in Idaho, 7 feet of snow. They need some warm temperatures to get that stuff melting and starting to get so that they can plant. So this burst of temperatures, I don't know. I think every farmer in the spring, you get some sunshine, some warm temperatures, and your mood, your attitude, you just become more positive, because spring is going to happen again, and it would be nice. In Ontario, it's looking like we have a quite dry 2-week forecast. There's some showers forecast along the way, but there's no, so far, touch wood, no big rainfall. In Ontario, the best thing we can have in early spring is a drought, because we're excess moisture almost all the time. We have full moisture recharge now. Give us some dry weather. Let us get to the field early and get the crop in the ground. That is what we want to see. So I don't know. I'm thinking my mood is very positive, and I think I represent most of the farmers here in Ontario.
Yeah, we're just starting to see things green up. Well, not even green up. Just as you're going on a walk, you kind of see a little bit of that green poking out of the lawn. You look in some of the ditches, just starting to see some green. So, yeah, spring it was very elusive. It feels like it's within our grasp. Maybe that's the best way to describe it here at this point. Hey, Pete, I know you wanted to hit on as one of your topics today, tillage and erosion. What's your thinking there?
Yeah, so, I mentioned the 5.6 inches of rain. There were areas on that Friday when the rain started, that Friday night, we had thunderstorms. And it wasn't always the amount of rain that came down. There were some areas that only got, 38 millimeters, so an inch and a half, 1.6 inches. That shouldn't be enough to do damage. But it came so fast and so hard that we saw all sorts of erosion, and other areas that got more than that. I mean, areas that got up to 3 inches in less than an hour. And boy, even growers who've done a tremendous job, Nature Nut Nick at Strathroy, my great friend there's nobody that is more soil health conscious, more ground cover conscious than Nick. And he had erosion, and it was running down the track lines where the sprayer had run. He had cover crop rye planted there. He had corn stalks, but man, the sprayer tracks, they're so compacted, and they're a bit of a depression. And once that water starts to track down, and it's not a huge slope, but it's long enough, we just get that erosion. So I've had a bunch of growers, Shaun, reach out to me and kind of say, like, we're doing less tillage. Pete, you keep pushing us to do less tillage. But dang, I ran that high-speed disc last fall, and I think I'm getting more erosion now than I got when I used the moldboard plow. And it's less tillage. How can it be worse for erosion than when the moldboard plow is the maximum amount of tillage? But Shaun, the problem is that when we run that high-speed disc in the fall, and it depends on the situation, but we tend to bury all the trash. We tend to leave the soil fine and flat. And so once the water starts to move, and we loosen that top 2 or 3 inches, we break those continuous pores, we actually sort of start to set ourselves up for more erosion, because if that soil's a bit frozen or it's too fine and too flat, and once that water starts to channel, just like Nick's, where it tracks down where that sprayer ran, because Nick has lots of residue, but if you buried the residue, then you get more erosion. If you moldboard plow, as much as I hate the moldboard plow because it does all sorts of bad things, but it's rough. When you moldboard plow, it just is never flat, it's never smooth, and it's rough. And so there's spots where the water can go into the bottom of that 6-inch plowing, and these spring thaws or these spring early rains that really create some erosive potential, they actually become worse on some of this fine, firm stuff from just limited tillage last fall if you buried all the residue. And by the way, Shaun, the other thing that I should mention is that 80%, a full 80% of our soil erosion from water, and probably from wind, but from water for sure, happens in 2 or 3 or 5 events every year. It's not all the time. It's really specific times when it happens, and it almost always happens outside of the growing season. So kind of, November the 1st or December the 1st, right through until May the 1st, something like that. And in April, we are in the heart of the risk season for erosion, and you get those really harsh thunderstorms. And we're getting more thunderstorms. This spring, we actually had thunder snow twice and already a thunderstorm, and it's only April the 10th.
Well, I was just thinking about how all this is a real balancing act, right? And you mentioned about, the 1 or 2 events, it's like, man, I think I think we should really till this field. Oh, really? I don't know. It's pretty light ground. Oh, it'll be okay. Right? And then December rolls around and you get that big wind, or maybe in March you get the big wind like we can here where I am in southern Alberta, and the whole quarter section is up in the air because the wind's blowing 100 kilometers an hour. And why did we ever till this? Get out the manure truck! Get out the manure truck! We gotta get this land back. It is about those events, but it is balancing, right? Because you're talking about water erosion in the example with tillage, but I would think when it comes to something like wind erosion, the no-till is always the safest option in comparison to the tilling, correct?
100%. And no-till typically is better even with water erosion. No-till is absolutely better with wind erosion. And even, you get down into Kansas, they've been so dry in Kansas that even the no-till farmers aren't okay. The wheat down there looks really tough in the dry areas. It didn't germinate in time. It looks like it could well be a write-off. But as you know, Shaun, even with the crop residue there, if it's super dry and you get fierce winds, it's not enough. It will still blow. But if you've worked it, oh my gosh, that's when we get the dust bowls when we've worked that soil. In Ontario, I know why the growers they're trying to do less tillage because that is good for the soil. But the challenge really becomes if you bury the residue. And that's what we saw this spring is it were growers who left that oat cover crop there. And so we have it's dead, but the residue is there, almost no erosion. I won't say none, but it really reduces it. On the other hand, that oat cover crop, if we don't get the right weather in the spring, it's going to keep the soil cold and wet. And then it delays planting. So, the balancing act is is always a struggle.
Yeah, and that land's worth a lot, so we want to keep as much of it there as possible.
Yeah, and it's always the best soil that blows away in the wind. That we know that for sure, and it's the same with water erosion. That maybe not when we start washing the gullies. That's not the best soil, but boy, the water coming into where we concentrate it is taking the best soil away, the high organic matter, the good, the high nutrient levels. Some of that wind erosion stuff would say that wind erosion, the organic matter, the phosphorus, the potash levels in the soil that moves in the wind is 10 or 15 times the nutrient value of the field average. And you just go, wow, that is definitely the best stuff blowing away.
Wow. Yeah. Man alive. Yeah, got to keep it home. Okay, let's take a break. We'll be right back with more of Agronomic Monday, brought to you today by ABJ AgriProducts.
How's your farm's financial performance? Know where you stand and take your operation to the next level with FCC Benchmarker. Compare your farm performance against similar-sized operations in your area with FCC Benchmarker, a new tool from Farm Credit Canada. It helps identify your strengths and areas for improvement and empowers you to make strategic business decisions. Ready to start? Contact your local Farm Credit Canada office for details.
As you head out into the field this season, the Corn School's got you covered. Everything from tillage discussions, weed control info, field trial results, yield strategies, and more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
If you're thinking about growing oats in 2023, how about trying CDC Endure from Alliance Seed? CDC Endure Oats is consistently one of the top yielding varieties in the Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta provincial yield trials. With strong standability, excellent disease resistance, and excellent end-use quality, CDC Endure might be the variety for you and your farm. Available from authorized Alliance Seed retailers, Parrish and Heimbecker, Patterson Grain, and Northwest Terminal. For more information, visit allianceseed.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Agronomic Monday. Today's show is brought to you by ABJ AgriProducts, North America's exclusive distributor for air bubble jets and easy jets, providing reduced drift and increased plant coverage. To improve your spraying operation, please visit them at abjagra.com. Shaun Haney, your host, joined by Peter Pete Johnson. Nozzle selection is so critical when it comes to what you were doing in the field. What is the application that you were working on when it comes to spraying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one nozzle will not do everything that you want it to do. And we got to get back to that. When everything was glyphosate tolerant, every Roundup Ready, all you've sprayed was glyphosate. It was so easy. But we're not there anymore. We have so much resistance. We've learned that we can't do that. And if you have a contact spray, you need a finer droplet. If you're spraying a fusarium fungicide on your wheat and you're trying to hit a horizontal target, man, if you don't have a coarse droplet, you are not going to be able to do with that spray what you want it to do, and you have to have it at an angle. So the contact spray, straight down, nice fine spray. For the most part, it can be too fine for sure, but you got to get that coverage. Fusarium fungicide, we want forward, back angles, and we want coarse droplets. We get into something like dicamba, and there we really need the ultra coarse droplets so that we get it to the target. It's very mobile in the plant. We don't need perfect coverage. And nozzles, it's a real science. And I don't know, every grower that is running a sprayer definitely needs to do the best job possible in order to get the best control. Lots of times when you get a weed control failure, you can go back and say, in reality, I did not use the right nozzles, and that's why the weed control failed.
Yeah. It sort of reminds me of how, one nozzle doesn't fit all, but it's sort of like one wheat variety doesn't cover the entire Western Canadian prairies anymore. Like we've evolved. Hey, Pete, I know we wanted to hit on tile drainage, and there was a conversation on Twitter, a bit of people asking questions. If I'm on a slope, why would I ever need drainage tile? Explain.
Yeah, so that was a tweet coming out of, I think it was Iowa, and that was a conservation program that was tweeting about it, and you could tell that they were not happy that slope was getting tile drained, because the concept always is that the water runs off the slope down into the valley or the hollow, call it what you will, and so it doesn't need drainage on the slope. It's really funny, Shaun, because I talked to Dave Hooker's class last Tuesday on tile drainage, and we talked about this very thing. So Ridgetown campus, University of Guelph, all these young agronomists and farmers coming on, and at the start of the class, I asked, so how many people, have tile drainage? And a lot of kids put their hand up. And then I said, so how many people understand tile drainage? And most of those same people put their hand up. By halfway through the class, I think less than 1% of those students would have said that they really did understand tile drainage. On the slope, sure, if you get too much water, and so that soil profile is fully saturated, then you get that water running off the surface, and then you say, well, why do I need tile? But the reality is that top 2 feet, the top 6 inches that you need to be dry so you can go and plant early is fully saturated. And the only way it'll ever dry without tile is for it to evaporate away. And lots of days we don't get good evaporation. We have great weather here this week. But you know what, Shaun? Even with great weather in the spring, several days are low drying index. We have some average drying index days, but we have no high drying index days. And you got to get that moisture to evaporate. Whereas if you have tile drainage, then it takes away that excess moisture that is in the soil. And it doesn't take away moisture that the crop can use. People just have to get their brain around this, and so many people do not understand that. They think that, oh gosh, on a dry year, my untiled ground is going to yield more than my tiled ground. It never happens that way, because on the tiled ground, you have the usable moisture still there. You plant earlier. The roots go deeper on those plants because they have oxygen in that soil deeper. They can go deeper. And then when it gets dry, they can access that moisture that's at depth. Whereas on the untiled ground, the roots don't go deep. You plant into less than ideal conditions. You get compaction. You mud it in. And it gets dry. They just can't follow the moisture down the same as where you do on tile. And so that sloping ground, that once you have full moisture profile recharge, sure, you get surface runoff, which, by the way, surface runoff from an environmental standpoint is way worse than moisture coming out of the tile most of the time. The estimate is that there's 10 times the nutrients in surface runoff that there is in tile drainage. And not that tiles don't have their issues, and we don't have time to talk about all of it, but we can do something about the tile. We can't do much about the surface runoff. So there's so many reasons why we want to tile that slope, and the Ontario experience says it all. In that Twitter discussion, there were some growers that says, way back in the 50s, we tiled the low spots, and all that did was turn the slopes into the wet spots. And so now we tile everything. We systematically tile the whole field, and that's how you make $40,000 an acre land productive.
So why do some groups say that tile, like they argue against tile? What's the fundamental point of the battle here when it comes to conservation?
Yeah, and so I think that's a great question, Shaun, and it is this concept that you're taking water out of that natural ecosystem and moving it to the water course more quickly. And that is actually correct. I mean, we do get it to the water course a bit more quickly, not than surface flow. Like it's a real balancing act. But because tile have clearly been shown to put nitrogen into the Gulf of Mexico, and that is because we haven't tried to treat that water. We do get more nitrogen in tile water than we would like, and especially if you're putting nitrogen on in the fall and then the tiles run all winter, we're getting some of that nitrogen out into the Gulf of Mexico and create the hypoxic zone in the Gulf of Mexico. So there are some reasons. The phosphorus algal blooms in Lake Winnipeg and in Lake Erie here in Ontario. So there's some concerns. But the reality is, tile done right is an environmental win. And because a lot of people don't really understand how tile work, and because we haven't always solved the issues that we can create when we do tile, then there's this concept out there, this perception that from an environmental standpoint, tile is all bad. And that's simply not the case.
As we've been talking about it is early spring, Pete, and one of the, I guess one of the agronomic points that people will debate about is waiting for soil temperature. And when it comes to, say, putting your cereals in the ground, what's your thoughts on that?
Are you kidding me, Shaun? You're really going to ask me that question? How many times have we talked about ultra early seeding on cereals? In fact, on last week's Word, I quoted some research from Josh Naselski from University of Guelph, where they seeded oats with a drone, and they compared that to seeding oats with the drill. And so the oats with the drone only yielded about 131 bushels per acre. The oats that they seeded with the drill, I think it was 142 bushels per acre. And you say, I lost 10 or 11 bushels per acre. No way, I'm using the drone. Well, wait a minute. If you could get out there with the drone and do ultra early seeding and let that stuff start 2 weeks, 3 weeks earlier, then that could actually out-yield the drilled oats. And I'm not a big supporter of broadcast on the surface. My response to Josh was actually, it's always better when you get good seed to soil contact. That's why I push frost seeding. But soil temperature, man, if it is, Brian Barris's work from Lethbridge, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada is very clear. And he's even done it now on Durham wheat, and it looks the same. If the soil temperature is 2 Celsius, you better have that crop in the ground. And at 0 Celsius, it wasn't quite as good, but 0 Celsius was way better than 10 Celsius. With cereals, do not wait for soil temperature.
So what are some of your rules that you follow then? I kind of expected that answer from you, but are there rules here in the spring that we need to be paying attention to?
Oh, sure. It's called fit ground, right? And that's what the beauty of Western Canada is, that you're, a dry climate, which is also works against you. But lots of times in the spring, you don't have tons of excess moisture the way that Ontario does. So if it's fit, get it in, right? I think, haven't you quoted me before? If it's fit, give it shit. And I don't care what the temperature is, okay?
I hear you, man.
So,
I hear you.
It's really the only thing. I mean, if you mud it in, then that's a whole different story. You're doing all sorts of damage. And that's, again, if you're in Manitoba, where the Red River Valley is fighting excess moisture, and you can't get out there ultra early, maybe broadcast seeding with a drone in the future is going to give you some opportunities that haven't happened again. But it just comes down to soil conditions. Forget about soil temperature when it comes to cereals. Canola might be a little bit of a different beast, right? Like, we are talking cereals, oats, barley, wheat, durum, those crops.
Yeah, good distinction. Hey, Pete, have yourself a great week, okay?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Shaun. Sorry, I rambled on too long, but I appreciate the opportunity nonetheless.
All good. I appreciate it very, very much. Make sure you download this week's episode of Wheat Pete's Word. A new episode drops every single Wednesday wherever you get your podcast. Okay, let's continue with Agronomic Monday after this quick break. Today's show is brought to you by ABJ AgriProducts.
MNP's farm management consulting team is proud to help farmers and livestock producers remain competitive and profitable. Our team is made up of professional agrologists and consultants who come from extensive agriculture backgrounds themselves and offer a high level of technical expertise, first-hand knowledge, and close relationships within the agriculture industry. Whether you're looking for help with your day-to-day challenges or require specific advice, our customizable service offering means you can call on us for whatever advice you need. Visit us at mnp.ca to learn more.
Whether you're seeding, harvesting, or anything in between, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has you covered. Timely agronomic information from industry experts available online anytime. Give your wheat crop a good start and a great finish with the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by C&M Seeds, Syngenta Canada, and the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commission.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. We're now going to talk to today's show sponsor. Looking forward to this. We're talking to Murray Purvis. He is the owner of ABJ AgriProducts. Hey, Murray, how are you?
Hey, not bad, Shaun. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on board here today as the show sponsor. Very, very much appreciated. Hey, Murray, let's talk about this EasyJet nozzle. People are talking about it. It's getting a lot of attention. What are some of the features and benefits?
Well, since the case-aim system came out, which is the whole PWM system has really taken off over the last few years, what we found was you're using a state-of-the-art spraying system, but you're using an old technology nozzle. So, in other words, at higher pressure, 40 to 60, you've got a lot of drift. Those nozzles, about 25% of the droplets are driftable. Whereas with EasyJet, it's more like 2%. But then there's the other side. If you get too coarse a droplet, then you're not getting the proper coverage. So with using the standard nozzle coming with the PWM system, you end up with larger droplets when you drop the pressure to reduce your drift. So with EasyJets, you have minimal drift. You spray at 40 to 60 PSI, and you have an optimal droplet size.
And in what sort of situations, Murray, does this really have a like the key fit?
Well, it works for all applications. It's not just specified for one. Basically, what it comes down to when you're spraying crop protection product, you need coverage in order to get the value for your dollar. So you need to maximize your coverage in order for your product to do its job.
Yeah, you've been in the nozzle game for a while. We've seen just a lot of innovation and a lot of movement forward to do that, provide the better coverage and minimize the drift, which is another component of that comes with some of these new technologies.
Yeah, something I should mention. One of the key elements for the nozzle is, and a lot of people don't get it, but when I talk droplet size, your droplets under 200 micron in size, those are so small and light that is your drift potential. Gravity can't pull them down. On the other side of the equation, if you get too large a droplet, over 660 micron, those are too big and heavy to stay on the leaf. So with EasyJet, everything produced is between 200 and 550 micron. But the secret there is within that range, about 75 to 80% of them are between 3 and 400 micron.
What about the water volume?
I can't go against label, of course, but I have many customers that, because they're seeing the coverage that they have reduced their water volumes to, say, 5 gallons and have had tremendous results. And as I say, I'm not going against label or anything like that, but it works.
If you want more information, you can go to abjagra.com. Murray, what other information are they going to find there at your website?
Well, you're going to find our air bubble jet, of course, which has been around now for 25 plus years. It's designed for the conventional sprayer, and basically, the two of them provide exactly the same spray quality, but the one's designed specifically for the PWM system, and then their bubble jet, it works on the conventional. And as I mentioned, both of them provide the same spray quality.
And Murray, can people order directly from the website, or do they work through their local dealers?
You can go through the local dealer, or yes, right from the website. We have an online store, and just top right-hand corner, and you're there.
Murray, as I look at the website, I see that there's a whole bunch of different assortment of colors of the nozzles. Is there something to that, or what do I need to know?
Well, each color represents a ISO color. So each different color has a different flow rate. So the yellow one, or the lilac, would be a 0.25 or 0.25 gallons per minute. So each different color represents different flow rates for different application rates.
Awesome stuff. Hey, Murray, really appreciate you joining us here today. All the best to you. Good luck with the upcoming season, and really appreciate ABJ AgriProducts being today's show sponsor.
Great. Thanks, Shaun. I really appreciate it. And you have a great day.
Yeah, I encourage everybody to check out the website. That again is abjagra.com. When we come back on RealAg Radio, we'll get to the top ag news stories of the day. You're listening to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by ABJ AgriProducts.
Warehouse, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I'm looking for some nitrogen.
All right, we're running low and it's awful pricey, but let me check. Hold.
The answer to low supply and high prices for nitrogen is Envita, a microbe with systemic nitrogen fixation. Envita works throughout the foliage and roots, providing a right place, right time source of nitrogen to maximize yield in corn, wheat, and soybeans.
Yeah, we're all out, but...
You know what? I'll take some of that Envita.
That's what I was going to recommend.
Book your Envita while supplies last.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by ABJ AgriProducts. ABJ AgriProducts is North America's exclusive distributor for air bubble jets and easy jets, providing reduced drift and increased plant coverage. To improve your spraying operation, please visit them at abjagra.com. That's abjagra.com. Let's get to the top ag news stories of the day. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the Bank of Canada is going to be getting together they're going to provide some guidance on Wednesday. And the Bank of Canada is really expected to hold interest rates steady on Wednesday, weighing the resilience of the Canadian economy against stress in the global banking system as it waits for inflation to recede. Now, the Bank of Canada has really been essentially in this sort of pause mode since back in early March. They were the first of the central banks in the G7 to pause on rates. Since then, other countries have followed suit. The Bank of Canada rate is at 4.5%. It got there because of 8 consecutive increases. And I guess if you look at it since this pause, according to numerous stories that I read online, National Post, Globe and Mail, one of the things they're dealing with is essentially some conflicting data. And what I mean by that is looking for unemployment to rise. It's about 5%. But we've also seen consumer spending be quite resilient through this time period. But at the same time, there's some concerns about the banking sector in the U.S., Europe, and will that create some constriction in lending even here in Canada? In a Globe and Mail story, Governor Tiff Macklem said the decision to pause rate hikes is conditional, and the bank may move again if it sees an accumulation of evidence that inflation is not subsiding. But private sector analysts see little chance that Mr. Macklem and his team would restart monetary policy tightening this week, and rate cuts are off the table until inflation falls further. The annual rate of consumer price index inflation stood at 5.2% in February. That's down from a peak of 8.1% in last June. So we have seen a receding there, but at 5.2%, it's still double the central bank's 2% target on inflation. So we'll definitely be covering that on Wednesday. 1 in 3 Canadians say they are struggling financially due to the high cost of living, a level not seen since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, according to a recent survey that was done by the Angus Reid Institute. The survey of 1,600 Canadians released on last Thursday found that 34% of Canadians are in bad or terrible shape financially, up 6 percentage points, since last July. 34% of Canadians. This is where the pausing on rates, as we just discussed, is really, really critical. By comparison, 27% of Canadians reported being in bad or terrible shape financially in April of 2020, when governments put in place lockdown measures to try to curb the spread of COVID-19. Moscow could pull the trigger and suspend its participation in the Black Sea grain deal if sanctions and other obstacles to Russian exports remain the way they have been. The foreign minister from Russia issued that threat during his visit to Turkey, which had helped broker the agreement last year along with the United Nations, reporting WIO News. Quote here from Minister Lavrov, who said, "If there is no further progress in removing barriers to the export of Russian fertilizers and grain, we think about whether this deal is necessary. Any negotiation needs to be based on taking into account Russian interests, Russian concerns. It should be about principles on which the new world order will be based." Yeah, so this is really the crux. What's more important, sanctions on Russian grain and fertilizer, or is it to have that grain deal in place? And so here we are, a bit of a standoff. Some have speculated that this was going to be, if extinguished, this was going to be the last grain deal anyways. We heard Jacob Shapiro from Cognitive Investments talk about that here in the program several weeks ago. So we will follow that, of course, and the markets will as well. The U.S. and Canada have turned to North Sea crude for the first time since 2015 in a bid to replace Russian crude. Speaking of Russia, Reuters reports that the two countries have imported North Sea 40s crude for the first time since 2015, as countries seek to replace the Russian crude with the Refinitiv Econ data indicating a tanker discharged 770,000 barrels of 40s blend crude in February in Maine, and another 585,000 barrels of 40s crude unloaded in March at a Maine port. A third tanker unloaded 618,000 barrels of 40s crude in Delaware last week, the report said. Some of the crude was to be sent to Canada via pipeline. Feed barley prices, we haven't talked about that here in a little bit, but Western Canadian feed barley bids remain historically strong despite easing off their highs over the past month and trending lower. That story according to GrainFox. With bids of around $410 Canadian per ton into Lethbridge Feedlot Alley, feed barley is still a sell, says Mike Jubenville of Markets Farm. And as part of the webinar, however, he cautioned the barley market continues to face headwinds, including the availability of American corn. U.S. production of renewable diesel hit 5 million gallons a day for the first time in January. That story according to the Wall Street Journal. That extends a 2-year biofuel business boom and offering a potential cleaner alternative to the petroleum product that fuels industrial operations. So annual production tripled between 19 and 22, said the Energy Information Administration. Forecasts it will reach 3.34 billion gallons next year. That pales next to the more than 46 billion gallons of diesel the U.S. transportation sector consumed in 2021. But for the trucking industry, the fuel may offer help in reducing carbon emissions, while electrification of long-haul heavy-duty vehicles remains a long way off. Renewable diesel is made in a way similar that of conventional fuel-powered trucks and trains. Experts say it is similar enough to its petroleum-based cousin to serve as a drop-in replacement, meaning you don't need any sort of a customization of that diesel engine to be able to burn that fuel. India will likely see below normal monsoon rain this year, according to a private forecaster, a prospect that could hurt its vast agricultural sector and stoke food inflation in Asia's third biggest economy. The coming season may bring only 94% of the rain India usually gets from June to September. That according to Sky Met Weather Services, PVT, on today. A lack of grain spells trouble for the economy as it might cut yields of summer-sown crops like rice and sugarcane, driving up local food prices. The India Meteorological Department, the nation's official forecaster, is likely to provide its monsoon prediction later this month. And of course, we're following this very close in Canada, because if there's a lack of rain, there's a lack of crop production in India. That means, especially if we're concerned about high food prices in India, does that pose well for pulse exports out of Canada? How does, what happens there? That's so Canadians in agriculture following that very, very closely. Something I didn't talk about at the beginning of the show was the Masters here this weekend. I wonder if you watched it. I definitely did for a good part of Sunday, flipping back and forth between that and the Blue Jays game. But Saturday, boy, was it hard to watch Tiger. Oh, man, dude, no fault of his for dropping out on Sunday. He was limping around like Grandpa at the age of 90 does during planting time. He just brutal. I just feel so sorry for it. It was hard to watch. If you thought that Tiger was going to win that next major, if you saw him Saturday, it wasn't looking very good. But John Rahm was fantastic. Watching greatness. He is amazing. And it was good to see him beat Brooks Koepka and the rest of the field there on Sunday. And our Blue Jays, that's the Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays, the official team of Real Agriculture. They look pretty good. Yes, that was a great game yesterday, up and down and all over. And yeah, I'm curious though, how much, I love baseball on the radio. What is that something that you do while you're out in the barn, on the tractor during planting time, in the truck, whatever you're doing as you get out to the field here? I think it's kind of a real special time of year. I really enjoy something like baseball on the radio to pass the time and listen to the descriptions and things like that. What are your thoughts? Or I had somebody tell me once that when they're in the cab, they, especially at combining time, it's absolute silence. They don't listen to anything because they want to hear the machine operating. Now, I get that with combining because, you're listening, you can feel the throughput of the machine. Having said that, I am somebody that if I get in my vehicle, I have something on. Music, talk radio, a podcast, things like that, because I just don't like to sit there in silence. I'm like that in the office too. I got TVs going, I got the radio going, but we're all different. But do you listen to Blue Jays baseball or any kind of baseball in the springtime as you begin to hit the field? I would love to hear from you on that. You can, of course, send me that email. Love your feedback. There's fun things to talk about and there's serious things to talk about. Whatever it is, you can always provide me with your perspective, your thoughts, your insight, your commentary. Would love you to do so. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Or you can call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. And remember to check out RealAg on the weekend. That's right, RealAg on the weekend. It's a podcast that we launched here a couple weeks ago that you can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Find it on that Real Agriculture podcast feed. Also, you can hear it on Ralco stations in Saskatchewan. So there's a special treat for those of you in Saskatchewan. It's on the radio. That's right. Want to thank ABJ AgriProducts for being today's show sponsor. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. And, of course, we will chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of RealAg Radio, brought to you by high-performing new carbine insecticide from FMC. New carbine insecticide hits aphids hard with effective, selective, and extended control. It also has activity on ligus and tarnished plant bugs. Ask your retailer today.